We have a cop from Kern County, California. He talks about protective sweeps. Do they apply when you're outside the home? Can you actually enter a home and do a protective sweep? Briefly, John, he said, well, he actually wants to talk about this case called, it's called People versus Mack. It's a California Supreme Court case from 1980. And basically what happened there was the cops were investigating stolen property. And part of the stolen property, John, was like firearms. The people suspected being involved in a stolen property ring were highly violent. I think there was like 4 or 5 people involved in this ring. The cops went to the house, do like a knock and talk, and they start hearing, look out, the cops. A couple people came out. No, actually 5 males came out. No, 2 males. No. So 2 males saw the cops. They said, look out, the cops. And then they ducked back into the garage, heard some shuffling around and so forth. About 5, eventually, after several minutes, 5 people came out, and the cops entered the garage to sweep it to make sure nobody's in there that could pose a danger. Violent people, guns, etc. Right? All this kind of suspiciousness before they entered. And the cop is like, look, when you teach protective sweeps, they're talking about our classes, right? When you teach protective sweeps, you don't really talk about entering homes. You talk about when you're inside of a home, and that is a classic, Maryland versus Buie, Chimmel type of rationale for those people who care about case law names. But what about here, though? I mean, the cop is bringing up a very good point. Do we have the authority, if it's legit, and we do have, reasonable suspicion at least that there's a danger in that house? Do cops have the right to enter the home while they're making an arrest and so forth, or even investigation outside the home? Yes or no? Okay. And why?
Yes. And so basically, when we're looking at an analysis like this, it really helps to go to the Supreme Court's thought process, their analysis. Maryland versus Buie is your case, right? And they say, as far as protective sweeps, you can search the immediate area contemporaneous to an in-home arrest, right? And why? Okay. Prevent the subject from gaining access to weapons, affecting means of escape, or destroying evidence, right? And then you can look in adjacent areas, those nearby areas from which an attack could be immediately sprung. You can look for people in people-sized places. And then if you can articulate the basis to believe that there are dangerous Confederates throughout the home, well, then you can look throughout the home looking for people in people-sized places, right? And so if I am making an arrest of a subject on the porch of a house, does the same rationale exist? Does the same danger exist to those officers if they are there on the front porch making an arrest, a known drug house, violent offenders, gang house, whatever it is? Does that same danger exist if those officers are out there making that arrest in the front yard, steps away from the front porch? The answer is absolutely, right? And there is a Texas case that is directly on point to this, where the officers.
Well, there might be a Supreme Court case that helps you too, not just Buie.
Okay. Well,
does anybody in the chat know what case I'm referring to? There is a U.S. Supreme Court case that actually really kind of discusses cops entering a home during an investigation to sweep. Not they didn't use the word sweep, but to basically because of officer safety rationale.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about? The one involving the school shooter.
Yep.
Do you remember the name?
Anybody else can get it though.
Yeah. Who gets this? Come on, Sean. I'm depending on you, by the way, as my search and seizure instructor. That there might be actually. I think Josh is here too. Is Josh here? Let's. It is ready for it. Can we tell it?
I'll give you a hint. You pull the guy over. He's got the gold paint all over his face and the sock. What's he doing?
Look, Huffner.
He's huffing.
All right. Huffington. Look, these guys are. You gave him a good clue, but they're not latching onto it. All right, give him the damn name.
It's Ryburn versus Huff.
Yep.
Ryburn versus Huff.
I'm looking for a quote from Ryburn, but it's not as directly on point as your Texas case, because that really is what they did in Texas. I mean, they went into the home, swept it, and all this kind of stuff. Ryburn is like, hey, this lady, I think, is going to go get a gun. and they went in there and followed her in there and confirmed that she was going to grab a gun, and they left. But would you agree, though, it is a good Supreme Court case when talking about entering homes for officer safety? Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I'll give you the quote if you want it. Blow your skirt out.
What is it?
If the officers have an objectively reasonable basis to believe that the threat of violence is imminent,
Nice.
make entry, right? And so,
Yeah,
we talk about like officer safety, officer safety. A lot of times officers go to officer safety, and I say, well, is there really a recognized exception for officer safety? The answer is no. What we have here is we have exigency. Exigency when there is an objectively reasonable basis to believe that violence is imminent. And so if you can tell me on it, then you are good. Yep. But the Texas case, I mean, is directly on point, right? Gang house, multiple subjects inside. They arrest the subject on the front porch. One officer looks through the window, sees a gun, like a rifle inside the house. They push into the house. They, clear the house. And the court said, yeah, you're good. All the same.
They probably saw something in plain view. Is that kind of like why we were talking about it?
Yep. That's why it became an issue.
And actually, that's what happened in Mac too. By the way, they went into the garage to sweep it for dangerous people, and they saw the stolen property in plain view. So look, but again, we go back to the level of intrusion, right? I mean, being in the backyard versus being in the kitchen, being already present in the house and doing that sweep. Would you agree is going to be a little easier to justify than entering the home and never intending to enter it in the first place, right? Yeah. But entering because of a safety issue. I'm just telling you, because we teach articulation. And I love how you just said there is no officer safety recognition. I mean, we can call it that, but it isn't such thing. That used to be 1981 type police talk, right? It's the same thing when cops would thump on somebody. I shouldn't say that, thump on them, but they would use force on somebody, and they would just use the suspect was non-compliant. Any other questions? And those days are over, right, John?
Absolutely. The idea of less is more is no longer the way we can operate.
Yep. That is the case, Sean. That is the case. Ryburn versus Hub.